Speaker for the day. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to have you all attend this talk, and absolute thanks to Professor Saudamini Das for accepting our invitation. A little bit about our speaker for the day. Professor Saudamini Das is a professor of economics at the Institute of Economic Growth, Delhi. She was the former NABARD chair professor at IAG and a fellow of South Asian Network for Development and Environmental Economics, which we more commonly know as SANDE. She works on environment and climate change economics, especially on ecosystem services, climate change adaptation, and extreme events. Her work on storm protection services of mangroves have been a globally acclaimed research. Today, Professor Saudamini is going to speak on the topic, evaluating disaster management policy through evacuation decisions. Why social heterogeneity can be a limiting factor. Without much ado, I'll pass over the mic to Professor Saudamini.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Geeta, also for your invitation. And it's my great pleasure to be with you all and to share my work with you. So I'm going to talk to you regarding one of my old study that got published in climatic change, and also had received some good feedback from people. So I hope you do like it, and I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about the behavioral response of people. So because like you all are working, I think quite a few of you are working on behavioral issues. So how behavior matters, and how government whenever they're making a policy, planning, disaster management strategies, how they should also be keeping people's behavior and that nature in mind, so that they get optimal response from the people. That's what I'm going to talk to you today. So let me share my screen. Okay, so you can hear it now. Sorry, is it all visible now?
No, yes, it's visible. Yeah.
Okay. So now this is the topic that I have kept today for press lecture, evaluating disaster management policy through evacuation decisions, why social heterogeneity can be a limiting factor. Okay. So now, disaster management has come a long distance. If you compare 1980s and 90s and the 2010 and 20s, so things have changed dramatically at the ground level. So how exactly, when the government is investing so much and they're doing so much of activities so that disaster management becomes smooth and the life loss and property loss also is reduced, so how is it happening? Is it happening similarly across all regions, or there are groups who are behaving differently, and there are different issues which they need to take into account when they form a policy? That's what I'm going to talk to you today. So let me start with some of the very general slides. So this is one slide, which you can see here. Over the year, there is exponential increase in the number of natural disasters. This is the data I'm taking from MDAT, which is the most well-known source of natural disaster data. So you can see here that this is the number of disasters is increasing exponentially over the years. And here you can see this is a more, very latest information that is giving you the number of disasters, the different type of disasters. As you can see here, the bars are becoming taller and taller, and they're also becoming more colorful. So in the sense, like almost the number of disasters, almost every disaster is increasing, but the maximum being the number of flood and also the extreme weather. So how this is happening? So very clear, indications that that the climate change is affecting us globally, and natural disasters are increasing by leaps and bounds. This is, another very striking picture you can see here of all the disasters. The maximum increase, the most, significant exponential higher rate of growth is you see in case of flood, okay, and then followed by storms and then earthquakes. So the floods are really playing havoc globally, and that's because of the erratic rainfall pattern you have with climate change. And where are these disasters? If you see the geographical distribution of these, natural disaster, you can see here the Asian region is the maximum sufferer. So number of disasters are highest in the Asian region, followed by Africa and America, and then Europe, and the least disasters you are finding in case of Australia and New Zealand. So Asia, where we all are located, and maximum of the developing countries of the world are located in Asia, so they are having the highest number of disasters compared to other regions of the globe. Okay. So now, this is, I think one welcome development that you see over the years, that natural death from natural disaster has been controlled more or less, except the death from earthquake. The deaths from other natural disasters like, drought, floods, storms, etc. has been drastically controlled. That means this is one positive impact of the disaster management. You can see that whatever, the number of deaths in 20s and 30s and 40s has been really curtailed, and you see very limited number of deaths in 2010, and also further lower if you have the latest figure. Okay. Now, but what is happening to other economic losses? They're exponentially decreasing. Okay. Though we have been, that means all our disaster management effort has been concentrated in saving lives. And when it comes to saving other type of, economic assets, we haven't really been able to be successful so much. Economic damage is increasing exponentially over the years. So here I have data only till 2012. If you take the more recent figure, then maybe this figure also will look more dramatic. So economic disasters or economic losses has really not been taken care of in a disaster management attempt, and they're increasing over the years. Okay. Now, these are some of the, when you study the literature, so these are also some of the very consensus finding. What they say, climatic disasters have become intense and are predicted to be further more intense in the future. Both the recent report of IPCC that was released in 2021 and also said the same thing that was said also in 2014, and other also United Nations bodies also repeat the same thing. In future, we are going to see more intense and more terrible natural disasters. Exponential increase in material losses from disaster, though human loss has been partially controlled, and that also you saw in the previous slide. Disaster losses are partly, this is a good study that came out in Journal of Public Policy. So that said that disaster losses are partly from overwhelming disaster intensity and partly from a significant economic development in vulnerable areas. So this is something which really the policymakers globally need to take into account. And because there is scarcity of land, and they are wanting to acquire all the land, whatever is available to them, more and more people are going to live in the vulnerable areas. Not many economic development is happening over there, and that is the reason why the economic losses are also increasing exponentially over the years. So now disaster management priority have shifted to reducing vulnerability and managing the disasters rather than responding through relief and rehabilitation. This is a very significant development over the years. What they say, earlier the disaster management was 3R. They have to respond to the disaster ex post through relief, rescue, and rehabilitation. But now disaster management has become ex ante. They're trying to control the disaster through planning, preparedness, and prevention. So they have shifted from 3R to 3P, and this is because of the thorough, the global attempt that has been made over the years. So there has been a paradigm shift in disaster management globally that you can see later on also. So we are moving from 3R to 3P. Okay. Now, what has been happening nowadays? The hazard assessment, vulnerability analysis, enhancement of disaster management capacity of a society. So these constitute the component of a disaster management framework at the moment. Okay. Earlier, they used to say they used to wait for the disaster to happen and then provide rescue, rehabilitation facilities, etc. But rather than that, now they are doing hazard assessment, vulnerability analysis, enhancement of the disaster management capacity, so that the damage from the disaster can be reduced. Okay. So now, what is disaster management? Let me start with this simple equation that says risk is a function of a hazard into exposure into vulnerability. Okay, so what it says, risk is the expected damage, because this is an ex-ante equation that says how much damage, maybe in terms of life loss or property loss, one area is going to suffer. The expected damage from a particular region will depend on the hazard, the type, and the exposure. And what is hazard? A natural phenomenon capable of causing damage. Exposure is the people or property in the hazard zone who are likely to be exposed to the hazard impact. And vulnerability is the features that make one susceptible to suffer damage. having a bad house, or living right on the coast, or not having any economic backing to take care of some of the measures. So these could be some of the vulnerability features that make one susceptible to suffer damage. So now risk, how much damage one suffers, basically depends on these three. Okay, so now disaster risk reduction is lowering the risk through decrease in exposure and decrease in vulnerability, because you have no control on hazard. This is an exogenous factor, so this is going to happen. So what you can do is that you can reduce the exposure, or you can reduce the vulnerability, so that the risk from the hazard goes down. And this is what we call disaster risk reduction, by decreasing exposure or by decreasing vulnerability. So what is disaster management? So disaster management is steps taken to lower exposure and vulnerability. What type of activities you take? So planning is the TRR is basically planning the actual ground level activities at the disaster management. So how we prepare for, respond to, and learn from the effect of major failures to prepare better for the future event. So this is what we call the disaster management. Okay. So basically, TRR and DA both are having one objective: to reduce the risk from a natural disaster. Okay. So now what, let me just, have one slide on evolution of global TRR initiatives. So the first initiative was in the year 1990, when the United Nations declared the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction, 1990 to 1999. So this was the first global initiative taken by the United Nations, and that was because we had exponential catastrophic disasters in the 70s and 80s. Though the more people used to die in 20s and 30s, because the preparedness was zero. But then the disasters were not so catastrophic. In 70s, as you have already shown you in the first slide, there has been exponential increase, and 70s and 80s saw big disasters. So the global initiative was initiated in 1990, and 1990 to 99 was declared as International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction. Okay, this was the first initiative. Then the second initiative was the first World Conference on Natural Disaster Risk Reduction in 1994, and this was held in Yokohama, and then there was Yokohama Strategy for Safer World. So this was the first global, policy making body that was adopted in the year 1994. So this particular strategy, Yokohama Strategy, that gave the guidelines for natural disaster prevention, preparedness, and mitigation. So rather than responding to a disaster ex post, so they started making ex ante plans in the form of prevention, preparedness, and mitigation. That is called the Yokohama Strategy for Safer World. Okay, and this was applicable. This was adopted in 1994, and they wanted to. This was there till I think 2004. Then in 2000, because this was applicable for 10 years. Then in the year 2005, we had the second World Conference on Disaster Reduction in the Hyogo, and there the Hyogo Framework for Action 2005-15 was adopted. So this was more specific and having more concrete activities. And this particular framework introduced 15 different activities for sustainable reduction in losses by 2015. So this was the more emphasis was on life loss. So all the activities should be done in such a way that life loss from the disaster should be reduced by 2015. And this is bearing fruit. As you can see in the earlier slides, the number of life loss is decreasing significantly over the years. This is the third, disaster management initiative in the form of Hyogo Framework. And then the recent one, which is still prevailing globally, is that called the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and this is applicable from 2015 to 2030. And nearly 198 countries have signed this particular framework, and then working on the different activities mentioned in the Sendai Framework. That this was adopted during the third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in Sendai in the year 2015. So this is more specific, more elaborate, and has already prioritized activities. It has 4 priorities, and this is putting more and more emphasis on resilience building and build back better, rather than reducing the losses, because now the losses has more or less been controlled because of the different activities. So now the emphasis on resilience building, so that people bounce back better after the disaster, and also build back better, the resilience of the society, and also resilience of the building. or the resilience of the ecosystem, whatever. So that's what they're trying to put more emphasis, so that whenever we have a disaster, we will neither have more economic losses nor human losses. And also people will turn back, life can be returned to normalcy with the minimum possible time period. So that's what is the Sendai framework. And most of the countries in the world, especially developing countries, they're all following this particular framework to manage the disasters. Okay, so now, so these are the countries, like, for many countries you do not have data, but why I wanted to show you this picture, that India is implementing disaster management in full capacity. 92% of our local governments, state governments, are following the disaster management strategies as adopted or as initiated by the national government. So whatever we have the National Disaster Management Authority, and also we have the State Disaster Management Authority at the state level. So whatever is being decided by NIDM are also being followed in toto by the state governments. So that means disaster management is one area where the Indian government is really doing a good job. Okay, so now, so theoretically, this is what is happening. So I'm going to tell you what is happening at the Odisha, at the state level. So I'm taking obviously as Odisha example because I've studied that state very, extensively. So this is what I'm going to see. So in Odisha, if you all remember, in October 99, there was a super cyclone, a massive loss of life, property, 12 districts were severely affected, 10,000 people died. So that is also the positive side is that, so after this cyclone, there was a regime shift in disaster management in the state. Okay, so what is the regime shift? What did they do? Here I try to summarize the activities taken by the state government. So there was legislative reform in the very next year, 2000. So the state government formed a Odisha State Disaster Management Authority. State of the Odisha was the first one to form a disaster management authority at the state level, and that was the first state to do this, and that was immediately after the 99 cyclone. So now, earlier the disasters were being managed by local governments, basically the block level or at the district level, and there was no state body taking the overall decision making. But so this from this OSTEMA, and OSTEMA has really been doing very, very good job, and they have received so many awards over the years. This was the first attempt. Then second was the implementation of DRM, Disaster Risk Management Project, which is a Government of Odisha, Government of India, and UNDP Disaster Management Project. So that was implemented in the year 2002, and this continued for 7 years till 2009. So this was actually a turning point in Odisha's disaster management activities. So what this project did was, I think out of the 30 states, districts, this was implemented in 16 districts. So they invested a lot on disaster awareness and community capacity building. So they try to make, all the communities, the local people capable of taking some disaster management action. And the focus group over here was a local institution and civil society. Then after this 2009 DRM, so they started another DRR activities, which was focusing on state and district disaster management institutions at the higher level. And here the successful preparation before the arrival of disaster and optimal response during the disaster. So that whatever has been taught to the local communities, and that also should be in sync with the activities or action taken by the state level or the district level authorities. So these were the DRR activities in between 2011 to 13. And then after 2013, they implemented another project from 2013 to 17, which is enhancing the, resilience capacity of the disaster management and climate change, which is strengthening community and institutional resilience, access, correct, and strengthen the success, weakness, and limitations of earlier capacity building efforts. And here the focus group was both civil society and institution. So here they try to say whatever we have done, whether they are really doing well or not, they wanted to learn from the field and also take corrective measures. So this is enhancing the resilience capacity of the people. So this is how at different period, different activities, different planning and program and initiative, the state government has been increasing doing disaster management and trying to increase the disaster management capacity of the locals, of the general community. Okay, so now what are, if you summarize, so now the state has multiple cyclone shelters under the national and the, I think this is National Cyclone Risk Management Program, which was financed by the World Bank. So they earlier in 99, when the super cyclone came, Odisha has only 23 cyclone shelters, but now they have 135 by Westoma and 65 by Red Cross in 2014, and many more right now. Along with this, they're also using all the schools and college buildings in the coastal districts are also prepared in such a way that they can also be used as shelters during any natural calamity. Then there is a massive awareness program through grassroots workers and multiple media, qualitative change in dissemination strategy, different target groups. So almost everybody is fully aware of a disaster, what to do, what not to do, what precautions to take, etc. And along with the community, there is also training and modern equipment are being provided to people. So there is a village task force in each village, and they are in charge of, they are giving trainings, and also some, basic modern equipments have been provided to them. So they will come forward to help all the villagers during a natural calamity. And that is also Cyclone Shelter Management and Maintenance Committee, CSMMC. So who are in charge of the cyclone shelters, so that the shelters are managed well throughout the years. And that is also state level institutions like ODRAP, Odisha, the Disaster Rapid Action Force, and they're also doing fantastic job. They are the ones who bring the life back to normal in the minimum possible time. So if we can see in recent years, whenever there is a natural disaster in Odisha, within 2 to 3 days, life comes back to normal. Whereas after the super cyclone, it took nearly 2 to 3 months for life to become normal, but that is happening within 2 to 3 days. So that is a drastic change, and that is all happening because of ODRAF. So this is how so many activities and so many different types of disaster management activities has happened in the state. Okay. So now how do they communicate between different groups? So you can see there is a nice institutional arrangement. So at the state level, there is this, Odisha State Disaster Management Authority and also Special Relief Commissioner, SRC. And at the district level, there is State Fire Office, Odisha Disaster Rapid Action Force. And then at the village level, there is Cyclone Shelter Management Committee. And then below them, there is a village task force, and below them is the civil society. So this institutional development has been so well linked to each other that whatever is decided by Ostama or SRC, within 1 hour that reaches the civil society. And the communication link is being so strong. So that is why this is helping the state to manage the disaster so well. So you can see that, from different sides, almost, the state is leaving no stone, and, they are, like they're trying to make everything foolproof so that disasters are managed well. So now, as I said, this happened in the year 2002. In 2013, we had a very severe cyclone called Phali that came, hit Odisha in year 2013. So the state had already 10 years of disaster management when this cyclone came. And that is the time when I decided, okay, let me study how effective has been this disaster management initiative of the state government, and did it really make a difference? So what happened during Phali? So this was actually an example of efficient disaster management, and the government of Odisha received an award from the World Bank for managing this disaster so well. Accurate prediction of the landfall before 2 days. So 2 days means you have 48 hours to take all the preventive measures. So we have enough time before the state government. During super cyclone, the accurate prediction could be made only before 12 hours. So the state government did not have time to make any program or plans, but here they could have 48 hours, which is enough to take good, preventive measures. Then evacuation of nearly 1 billion people, 780,000 people, whereas only 35,000 were evacuated in 99. So this is again another dramatic development. You can see here how the evacuation also increased multiple, times. And evacuation of 3,000 livestock, whereas in case of a super cyclone, there is no evacuation of the livestock, zero evacuation. 600 public buildings, including the cyclone shelters, are used as shelters. All the schools and college buildings, and all the, even in the big halls in the temples, dharmasalas, whosoever were, having a good structure, they were all used as cyclone shelters. So only 21 people, lost their life, human casualties, compared to 183 in the same area during 99 severe cyclone. In 99, we had a super cyclone, and also we had a severe cyclone in this area that were affected by Palin, and only nearly 183 people have died. So you can see there that also the death toll, because that is not a highly vulnerable area. In super cyclone, 10,000 people died. Many people say that Odisha government reduced death toll from 10,000 to 21, but that is really not true, because this cyclone affected area which is not so vulnerable, and the actual death in that cyclone was 183, which is comparable to Palin. So that is drastic decrease in the death toll. And normalization of life in a minimum possible time. This is also another fantastic development. So this is what says the cyclone management has really been efficient, and the state government did good job. So if everything seems to be so good, then what was the need for me to study? So I tried to find out, was the behavioral response to evacuation order similar across regions? Or if not, what were the drivers? Did people behave similarly? Or there were some differences? Some people behaved better, some people behaved badly. And if some people did behave badly, what were the drivers of their bad behaviors? This is what I wanted to study, so that cyclone management or a disaster management can be made more foolproof. Okay, so now I studied evacuation behavior. So let me come to a little bit of theory over here. Evacuation behavior is something which has been extensively studied and synthesized for developed countries, but not for developing economies. Okay, so now what people say, evacuation behavior is a social process because it's not a personal decision. Usually people take this decision in a group. Whatever your neighbor does, you try to do that. So this is a social process. And it depends on the risk perception from the warning, what type of message you are getting from the government, what is the content of the message, how frequently this is disseminated to you, your understanding, belief, accuracy of the message, the clarity, whether this is, very clear to the people or not, and personalization sense whether this is really affecting the way you are perceiving the threat, whether this is really linking you to that or not. And similarly, presence of children and old people in the household, prior training and education, female headship. So these are some of the factors that seems to have been affecting the evacuation behavior of the people globally. But these are all the evidences from developed economies. And people also try to now the evacuation behavior study has become so developed that people are trying to put it in different theoretical framework. And one very famous one is a protective action decision model, where they try to put the decision making into different stages of starting, beginning with the receiving of the evacuation order till actual evacuation taking place. So they try to how people process this information and what are the factors that affect the information procession. So this is being developed through this protective action decision model framework. Okay, whereas in case of developing countries, there are very few studies, though there are attempts to study the behavior after the Indian Ocean tsunami and Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, but otherwise there are very, very few studies that try to analyze the evacuation behavior in developing economies. And whatever, though in India also we have one study by IIT Mumbai. So what they try to say here, that in case of developing countries, usually the compliance to evacuation order is very, very low. And the main drawbacks are basically low awareness and the knowledge gap. Something like, like asymmetric information over here. Because the disaster management authorities never try to share complete information with the public. Where it is coming, when it is coming, how likely it is going to cause damage, and who are the people likely to be more affected, and where the sea water is going to be higher. So the complete information is never given. So many people say this type of asymmetric information is mainly the main reason why there is low compliance. And also there are other economic reasons, like people don't have vehicle, and maybe the shelter facilities are not there. They don't have a trust in the government. So there can be factors like this, but maximum they say the awareness has to be given. So that is how in the disaster management approaches, the more emphasis was put on providing awareness. Okay. So now I try to find out what happened in Odisha. So I try to study 4 districts where the evacuation took place during flooding, and those 4 districts are Ganjam, Puri, Jagatsinghpur, and Kendrapada. So I did a questionnaire survey. Otherwise, there is no way of collecting information. So I did a 2-stage purposive random sampling. So what I did, I decided these 4 districts. That was purposive because evacuation happened over here. Then I took all the shelter villages and picked up 2 from each district. So that was the stage 1. So 2 shelter villages from each district. And then from each village, I tried to study 40 households. So that I can study from 320 households, which is a good number to representative sample. So that was the sample with a 15% error margin. And how I decided these 40 samples was again, decided based on my consultation with the shelter management committee. So what they said that people who evacuated to the shelters are basically the ones who had kacha houses. Though some people having pakka house also came, but maximum were the kacha house owners who came to the shelter. So purposely, I decided to study 65% of kacha household, 25% pakka with 1 floor, and 10% pakka more than 1 floor. Though usually pakka household owners, they don't evacuate to the shelter, but if they are located in a very vulnerable area where the water is likely to enter their houses, or the pakka houses are located in a very, very low-lying area, then they also do evacuate. So that is why, and especially if they have only 1 floor, or even if they have more than 1 floor, if the water can go up to 2nd floor, 3rd floor, then obviously they have a threat to their life. So that is why I took maximum kacha house owners, and some from the pakka and some from the pakka house with more than 1 floor. So this is how purposely I decided my sample. So these are the 4 districts. Now let me tell you, this was the cyclone fell in landfall point. So this is where the cyclone made landfall. But because the cyclone was moving slow, so the entire area was, severely affected and evacuation took place. So these are the villages I studied. And out of these 4 districts, you can see this was the super cyclone track. Super cyclone made a landfall over here. So that is because Kendrapada and Jagatsinghpur were in the grip of the super cyclone. The disaster management activities in the awareness camps, the training facilities were really very, very intensive in Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada. And also the vulnerability of Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada is much higher compared to Ganjam and Puri because the sea is very shallow. The sea floor is very shallow in Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada. So that is the region, whenever there is a storm, the storm surge is very, very high. Whereas in case of Ganjam and Puri, the storm surge is never so high. So that was the region that, the disaster management activities are very intense in Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada. So I wanted to see whether the response also of the public was equal, linear across the districts, or it was different. Now, if I give you, these are some of the features of the households. As you can see here, they're not very different across the districts. Though if you see the first one that shows you the literacy picture, so Jagatsinghpur had more, secondary and above higher educated persons are more in Jagatsinghpur and less in Puri, and whereas primary educated are more or less the same. And Jagatsinghpur was also the one having the minimum illiterate people. Whereas in other districts in the sample, so there were more illiterate people. And then coming to another sample was, backward caste constituted, the high percentage of the sample, and that was true for all the districts. And coming to the education and income, you can see here, people in Ganjam were comparatively richer compared to other districts, and people in Jagatsinghpur were very poor in the sense, high income earners whose annual income was more than 3 lakh rupees in 2013. So this study happened in 2014. So was very little in case of Jagatsinghpur compared to others, and they're quite little high in case of Ganjam. But otherwise, the modal income in all the 4 districts was in between 50,000 to 3 lakhs. So they're not, though there are some district level differences, but they're not very striking, as you can see here, both education and or the social composition or in case of income distribution. And coming to asset ownership also, they're not very different, though people in the cycle ownership was more or less the same in case of Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada, whereas mobile phones were maximum people in Kendrapada had mobile phones, and the same number of people in Jagatsinghpur and Ganjam had mobile phones. Radio ownership was very little, and so also scooter ownership. And there are also people without any asset, but such people were the maximum in Puri. That means, like in Puri districts, we have maximum number of very poor people. And otherwise, the asset ownership, again, though different, was not so strikingly different across the districts. So now with this, I just thought, okay, the sample is not very dissimilar across the districts, they're more or less similar. So how the response rate varied. So then, were all the districts equally affected by the storm? This is a very, very important question to know. Otherwise, if in one district the damage is higher compared to the other, then one can see, okay, that may be the reason why people behave differently. But you can see here that in case of like in all the districts, we had fully damaged houses were more in Puri, followed by Jagatsinghpur, Kendrapada, and Ganjam, because the house quality was comparatively better in Ganjam, though Ganjam was very close to the cyclone landfall, but all districts had fully damaged houses. Severely damaged houses were also there, but I think severely damaged houses were very high in case of Jagatsinghpur and Puri, and less in Kendrapada, followed by Ganjam. And then partially damaged houses were there in all, and also there are no damaged houses in all the 4 districts. So again, you can see here that all the 4 districts suffered the house damage, and this is from the response of the households from the survey. So that means the storm also affected all the districts more or less similarly, though the impact was very high on Ganjam because it was very close to the landfall point. Okay. So now what is the response on evacuation? So this is the first one. So my first question was that response to mock drill and other awareness program. So you can see here. So I asked them, are you aware of such program in your villages? So in Puri and Kendrapada, more than 90% said yes, whereas it was the minimum in case of Jagatsinghpur. Though Jagatsinghpur was the landfall point of the super cyclone and maximum activity was happening in Jagatsinghpur, but people don't seem to remember much. So the minimum percentage over here said yes, they are aware of such program in their villages. Did you participate in the program? Ganjam had the minimum participant, 48%. And they said, because most of us are fishermen, you go to the sea, so we don't have time. And then next was Jagatsinghpur. Though here the people are mostly farmers, or they do betel vine, something like this, but then the minimum participation was from Ganjam, followed by Jagatsinghpur. Other family members participated in the program? No, very little. Okay. Learned and remembered something? So you can see here, the minimum household said that they remember something from the program. So that means whatever is happening at the village level, though these are regular activities, training and mock drill, everything is happening, when the cyclone comes, how you have to evacuate, what precautions you will take. But very little people seems to be remembering something. Though the percentage of, who remember is higher in case of Puri and Kendrapada, but such people are very low in case of Jagatsinghpur. So you can see here that the response rate to the mock drill and other awareness program seems to be really, really low in case of Jagatsinghpur compared to other districts. And this is the lowest in Jagatsinghpur, followed by Ganjam, and then seems to be very high in Puri, and then next in the Kendrapada district. So this is something, as you can see here, the participating in the program and remembering what is happening, though this is something very, very regular, is really not there, is not equally across the districts. Then when the state government gave, because the cyclone was predicted 2 days before, so the state government was giving regular warning for evacuation. So what was your thought? Did you think of evacuating after the warning? So 80% in Ganjam, 94% in Puri said yes, whereas 55% in Kendrapada, but only 33% in Jagatsinghpur said yes, we thought of evacuating. So why this low response rate? Okay, and where will you evacuate? To a neighbor's building, if not to a shelter? Only 5% said yes to a neighbor's house, not to the shelter. And then was your response wait and watch? Again, in Kendrapada, maximum said wait and watch, followed by Jagatsinghpur. Undecided. And how many of you decided not to evacuate? So maximum in Jagatsinghpur said yes, we decided not to evacuate. Because why you did not want to evacuate? So minimum said we will evacuate to shelter, and maximum said no, we will not evacuate. And I can see such percentage is so low in case of Ganjam, Puri, and also in case of Kendrapada. And Kendrapada is much away from the cyclone landfall point compared to Jagatsinghpur. So you can see here, the thinking process also is very dissimilar across districts when you talk about evacuation. Why you thought to evacuate? What are the reasons? Reasons why you thought to evacuate? Believed in the warning. Ganjam and Puri had more faith in the government, but Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada has very minimum faith in the government. So you can see here that they really don't trust on the government. And previous term experience, so that this was the maximum response in case of Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada. So those people who thought of evacuating, that was only because they had suffered so much during super cyclone that they thought of evacuating. Whereas the super cyclone had not so much of an impact in case of Ganjam and Puri, so they didn't have the experience. So this is the only reason why people thought of evacuating to shelter. Availability of shelter, again, because the shelters are available everywhere and people are very, okay, so because shelters are there, so that was not a big reason. And family pressure and no response. Again, in case of Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada, no response was very, very high. They didn't reply to this question of mine. So 55% from Jagatsinghpur also decided not to reply to my question. So you can see here how the thought process also varied across the districts. How many actually evacuated to the shelter? So now percentage of evacuation. So 74% of the households in my sample evacuated to the shelter, though 80% had said. The star means how many had thought of evacuation. 80% had thought of evacuation, but actually 74 evacuated. In case of Puri, 94 had thought of evacuation, actually 95% evacuated. In case of Jagatsinghpur, 33% had thought, but only 32% evacuated. And in Kendrapada, 55 to 53. So you can see here, with the evacuation rate was the minimum in case of Jagatsinghpur, followed by Kendrapada and then Ganjam and Puri. And what was the reason of evacuation? Were persuaded and convinced by VTA to come to shelter? And what is the percentage of voluntary evacuation? These bracketed figures are voluntary evacuation. 51% were forced by the police and the village task force to go to the shelter. The voluntary evacuation is only 22%, whereas it is 35% in case of Puri, 24% in case of Jagatsinghpur, and 32% in case of Kendrapada. So this is what you say is a non-linear response from the public. Though the government of Odisha is doing so much on evacuation in the evacuation response, drill, this thing and that thing, so that people listen to the government. You can see here the compliance rate is very, very low. So more than 50% people are forced by the village task force to come to the shelter, because Ganjam and Puri was very close to the cyclone landfall. So that is why maximum people were persuaded to come over there. The police has to apply force. If this is not done, then very few people will evacuate to the shelter and maximum damage will happen. So this is what is one thing that really makes one skeptical of the effectiveness of the disaster management, because every time there is a cyclone, the government has to spend enormous amount of money and force to make people evacuate. That nothing is happening smoothly. So the compliance rate is very, very low, unlike developed countries. The warning is given, people evacuate on their own. But here, nothing of this sort is happening. People has to be persuaded and the force has to be applied so that they evacuate the shelter. Now, what is the average distance they travel? So you can see here in Kazakhstan, because the shelters are there in every village. So the distance travel was very low, but still in spite of that, not many people evacuated. Now, the next question was that percentage who faced problem during their stay. So everybody says, there were a problem in the shelter, that some 25 problems were, described by people, limited space, there's no toilet facilities, there's no cooked food, this problem, that water was entering the shelters. So we had troubles, obviously, the shelters are not really made foolproof. So there are problems, but again, I think the maximum 65%, reported problem in case of Jagatsinghpur, whereas in other districts, it was not so high. Okay. And this is another question, which is, very, very important. I asked them, will you evacuate to shelter if such a storm strike your area in the future? You can see here, in Ganjam 73, but this increased to 81 because, they could see the storm was so ferocious. So in future, they will definitely evacuate. In Puri also the same percentage, 95 to 94. But here it increased only by very marginal, I think around 6%. And in case of Kendrapada, it increased from 53 to 68, 69%. So everywhere, because the storm was so ferocious, so people are convinced that in the future they will, definitely go to the shelter. But people in Jagatsinghpur seems to be very, very stubborn. So this is one district, which was coming out to be very different than the other district. So not because it was more away from the cyclone, because Kendrapada is more away, and Jagatsinghpur had very severe effect. So much of damage also happened over here. But people's response and people's behavior seems to be very different compared to other districts. So this was one reason, which even like it was when this was presented before the district development officers, they're also saying that yes, people we need a different strategy to convince different people. Whatever we are doing in Ganjam maybe has to be different, done slightly differently in case of Jagatsinghpur, or maybe differently in case of Kendrapada. The Ganjam and Puri people seem to be very compliant and they listen to the government. In other districts, particularly in Jagatsinghpur, people are very different. So you need to tackle and behave and deal with them very differently so that the response rate becomes higher. And Jagatsinghpur is the one where maximum death occurred. Around 8,000 people had died during super cyclone in Jagatsinghpur. And in spite of that, the response rate is very low. And the people are so indifferent to the disaster management activities over there. Okay. So then next, I try to do a logistic regression where evacuate to the shelter was one, and try to find out what factors really impacted. And here, in case of district, Ganjam was the baseline dummy. So you can see here both compared to Ganjam, the evacuation is low both in Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada, but very low in case of Jagatsinghpur. And who were the people? Illiterate people, evacuated more, and unemployed people did not evacuate. This is something very, very different. Unemployed people not evacuating. Now, cycle owners evacuated more. Other backward cases, people having pakka houses, low income, and then the other thing having a negative side, fear of theft in absence and scared to leave livestock behind. So these are the factors that came out to be inhibiting evacuation. So one is that other backward caste is a factor, and here as you can see here in the sample it was basically the backward caste. So compared to general caste, backward caste evacuated less. And the other reason is one is unemployed people, fear of theft, and scared to leave the livestock behind. So these are the factors that seem to have acted very strongly against the evacuation decision. So then in the next case, I try to find out, okay, so let me interact with these pictures with the district damage and see where these pictures are acting strongly in inhibiting evacuation. So as you can see here, I'm just presenting a limited result over here. The food model I'm not presenting here. So you can see here, so all the unemployed who did not evacuate were from Jagatsinghpur. In case of Kendrapada and Puri, so there are no observation, unemployed not evacuating, whereas in case of Kendrapada, there are unemployed, but some of them did evacuate. So only the unemployed who did not evacuate were from Jagatsinghpur. And household fearing theft, nobody evacuated. So this was, this was the full collinearity over here. So all the people who said, they are fearing a theft, none of them evacuated in case of Jagatsinghpur. Whereas though people also, were fearing theft in case of Kendrapada, but some evacuated. In Puri also people said, there was a fear of theft, but all of them evacuated. They did not stay back. But only in case of Jagatsinghpur, everybody who said, they are fearing some theft in their house, none of them evacuated over there. Okay. And again, livestock owners, again in Jagatsinghpur, not a single livestock owner evacuated because they said we do not have, we cannot take the livestock with us. And we are very scared to leave the livestock because they also can be stolen. So fear of theft of household, assets, or a fear of theft of the livestock seems to be really acting very, very strongly. In case of this was also a significant factor, but some people did evacuate. But here, not a single household evacuated who was, having livestock. Okay, and so also in case of pakka houses, though in case of there are pakka houses everywhere, but compared to Ganjam district, more pakka house owners evacuated. And also, as you see here, both some experienced worked only in case of Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada. Here, people who evacuated because of their experience of the previous job. So this picture is very decisive and very conclusive, saying that, okay, people are not behaving similarly, they are not thinking similarly, they are not responding linearly in spite of government doing intensive activities in all the districts. People in Jagatsinghpur seems to be very, very different, followed by Kendrapada and then Ganjam and then Puri. People in Puri are more compliant, whereas people in Jagatsinghpur are the least compliant. And why? So this comes, there are so many social factors. People who are unemployed. So, I had another study when I was discussing the death during the cyclone. So it also came out that people who are unemployed, who are doing some type of part-time jobs, they are the ones who died maximum. So because they are unemployed, they don't have any jobs, they probably try to take some type of risk, guarding others' houses, or they are, somehow they think, okay, nothing is going to happen to them. So they're more daring in nature. So that may be the reason, they decided not to evacuate, or maybe they thought if we stay back and if people evacuate, then maybe we'll go and steal somebody else's house assets. So that may be the reason, not a single unemployed person evacuated to the shelter in case of Jagatsinghpur. And also that also comes out from the house owners, because they were fearing theft of their household assets and also the livestock, they also did not evacuate. So this means the socio-economic factors also needs to be taken into account when the governments are, trying to design disaster management policy at the district level. So they need to see that, okay, nobody reported of a theft in case of this, I think, Ganjam district. So because that is not a social issue, but this was so strong in case of Jagatsinghpur. Though some people also, thought about theft in case of Kendrapada and Puri, but they didn't think it that biggest factor, because maybe the theft is not so big a issue in those districts compared to Jagatsinghpur. So this is, coming out very, very clearly that social heterogeneity, so differences in the socio-economic environment of the people, really needs to be taken into account when they design disaster management policy. This is another issue, I just try to see the emotional attachment to the shelter, because this is a public property. So are you, just had a question, are you really very proud that you have a shelter in your village? So you can see here that 92% in Ganjam, in Puri and Ganjam were very happy that they had shelter in their houses. The minimum response was from the Jagatsinghpur. Even their attachment to the public property is also not there. So this means there is something lagging in that district. So people are, like the social cohesiveness is really not present in that area. So maybe because, they have suffered so much, or maybe because it's a highly vulnerable region, and because there is no trust among each other, there is no fellow feeling towards each other. So this is coming out very, very clearly from the study that also presented. So these are some of the reasons why, like I feel government really think of doing something non-linearly across the regions if they want to have optimum response to their disaster management initiatives. Okay. So now coming to the conclusion, I think this is what is coming out very strongly, that clearly extreme weather events are crowding out the productive investment in the state, because every time we have it, because the government has to spend massive amount on evacuation and taking people, apply force, apply money, provide for them. So this is the one reason why, though they have been told, what precautions to take, how to preserve food, what all to be done, but this is all being still done by the state government. So all the money that is being spent on disaster management, and also in spite of all the training and and awareness campaign, so that is hampering the productive investment. The state is still remaining poor, because though they are managing the disaster well, but that is at the cost of the productive investment in the state. So okay, so what needs to be done? So maybe the government need to educate the stubborn communities. Learning is non-linear across the community. That is very, very clear from this study. So they need to educate people differently. Address social issues like theft, unemployment. So unemployed people seems to be behaving very daring in nature, or maybe they are trying to take advantage of others' vulnerability, so they don't want to go to the shelter because they can steal somebody's house. So this also needs to be taken care of. Ensure livelihood security. Make provision for livestock evacuation, and also recognize the vulnerability status. Some areas are, not all areas are equal vulnerable. Kendrapada is not same as Ganjam district. So they recognize that, and based on that, they can also have a different type of evacuation plan, not forcing all 100% everybody evacuates. They can have which villages to be evacuated and by how many, and which are the type of households to be evacuated. Pakka house, the false sense of protection, sea level rise. So because all the Pakka houses are not safe, because some Pakka houses also can be very risky if they are in the low-lying areas. So identify must evacuate region and also recognize the role of the natural buffer like casuarina, cashews and mangroves and etc. Which there are so many studies in that says they also provide protection. So these are some of the suggestions for resilience building in the area, and also to make disaster management more foolproof. That's what in my study has happened over there, and government needs to follow things differently, keeping the people's behavior in mind. Okay. So that's all from my side. I stop here.
Thank you, Professor Saudabni, for that wonderful talk. I'll very quickly turn to the audience and take a few quick questions. I'll invite the participants to raise their hands and unmute themselves to ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, you should start the discussion and let others follow.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Right. So what I was really wondering while you were presenting is, so the distrust that people might have towards the activities of the district or the state government might be understandable, but what I don't really understand is why, despite the active engagement of local institutions, is the response so poor? And that sort of completely baffles me. And could you throw some light on that?
So as I said, at every village there is a village task force, and also there is a village shelter management committee. But in case of Jagatsinghpur, even in the village task force was not responding well. Only 8% were convinced by the village task force. That means if people are not compliant, even the village task force also seems to be non-compliant. They're not doing their job properly. So which means there are some other factors operating over there. So you also see these things very dissimilar across all are representative of the government, because they have been given special training. In some areas they are doing so well, in some areas they are complying and they're trying to pursue maximum, but in one region why they are not doing well? The villagers are not responding, and the village task force is also not able to convince them. So I think I really have no answer to that, why this is happening, but this is happening at different level, both at the level of the villagers, at the level of the village task force, at the level of the cyclone management committee as well. I visited some of the shelters over there in Puri, and in Puri district, the cyclone shelters, and also in Kendrapada, the shelters are maintained so well. They are maintaining it like their own private house. But as in the case of Kendrapada, they're all damaged, dilapidated. Something is broken down from here, something is broken down over there. All whatever all the furnitures and other things are given to them. They're either stolen or not being kept. Nobody knows. I don't know. That is very, very different. Very attitude towards public property. So this really needs to be. The sense of belongingness seems to be lacking over there. So I think the psychology is very different. So maybe because there is more poverty, there is more suffering, and they're more vulnerable. So unless these things are taken care of, so there is very little trust towards each other. There is no neighborhood feeling. So I think this social distrust is something, that really needs to be taken into account in the disaster management to make it more, responsive. So if a cyclone comes to Jagatsinghpur, I doubt, the death will be higher, the damage will be much, much larger compared to whatever you are seeing. Because so far we haven't had any cyclone in that area, making a landfall. So that is something very, very scary, that people, they are really not so compliant over there. Yeah. And
Thank
that
you,
is at every level, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Professor. There's a question by Nihal. Nihal, would you like to unmute yourself and ask that question?
Yeah, sure. So basically, in the where ma'am showed the difference in evacuation across districts, if there could be a variable added, maybe to check for intensity of the disaster, because that might be a variable that is that might affect how many people evacuate. She did say that in Jagatsinghpur, I think the maximum number of people died in the previous disaster, but still their evacuation rates were low. So, which is kind of good evidence in the sense, but maybe just add a variable to control for the intensity.
Yeah. So, distance from the cyclone landfall point will be a good indicator. I can also do that. Also, the district domains, they're acting for that, because either you can measure the distance from the landfall point to the village center. So that I could have done, which I did not do, but I thought district domains will do this. Definitely, because Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapada were away from the cyclone landfall, so obviously the evacuation rate can be lower. That is true, but Kendrapada was further away than Jagatsinghpur. But that means the impact was further less in Kendrapada compared to Jagatsinghpur. But still, Kendrapada had a 56% evacuation rate, whereas Jagatsinghpur had only 33%. So, in spite of the impact, this is also coming out very clearly that people in Jagatsinghpur are not so responsive. Okay, did I make it clear, Nihal?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So even if I add that variable, the same result will come out.
Are there any other questions? So I think I'll close the Q&A session there. And Professor Saudamani Das, thank you so much for taking the effort and presenting and spending your time with us and answering all our questions. I appreciate your support, and I'll pass it over to Geeta, and yeah, I'll pass it over to Geeta to probably say some.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you, Professor Saudamani. It was an excellent, insightful, talk, which actually from the very beginning, and me being from Orissa, I did have the chance to visit few places, when the first super cyclone had taken place, and I had seen the kind of disaster that had taken place. Though I did go for a different project, it was not this project, but I have experienced in person what that looked post, So it's an excellent presentation that you did, talking about how it started and how, government of Orissa actually have made itself capable in terms of handling such kind of huge disaster. I think it sets an example for globally. So thank you very much for this talk, and hope, for some other collaboration and other talks, we'll again get back to you and have a collaborative. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you. I really look forward to having some collaboration with you all, with your interest and the type of diversified activities you all have been doing at OP Jindal, and also your publication records. I really look forward to that.
Yeah.
And Orissa government is doing good job. They have really become an example to many of the state governments, and they have been receiving awards. But I think the whole point is that they can do similarly with less expenditure.
Yeah.
Because there is also a lot of unnecessary expenses whenever there is a cyclone, because people don't cooperate. So if the way they have invested, if you also they receive cooperation from the public, then the state will have enough funds to do some productive investment, which is not happening over there,
Yeah.
because they keep on spending money on this. Yeah.
True. I totally agree with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this
Thank you,
invitation.
Naveen. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sudhamni. Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, Shivangi. Thank you for your support. Thank you.
Okay, so I take leave.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Keshav, we can stop the recording.